The boxing world has been buzzing around one matchup for months now, and the closer we get to fight night, the louder it all becomes. Errol Spence Jr. stepping back into the ring after a long absence, facing Tszyu in a high-stakes showdown that has fans, analysts, and former champions split right down the middle. This isn't just another comeback fight. This is a real test of timing, mentality, and whether one of boxing's most dangerous names can still operate at the elite level after being away for so long. When Spence first started talking about his return, there was already curiosity in the air. Not because anyone doubted his ability, but because the circumstances are so unusual. A former unified champion coming back after roughly 3 years away, not easing in with a tune-up, but jumping straight into one of the most aggressive and in-form fighters in the division. Tszyu didn't hesitate either. The moment his name was mentioned, he accepted the challenge, fully aware of what it meant for his career trajectory. Tszyu has made it clear from the beginning that he is not approaching this as a respectful showcase or a slow feeling out process. His mindset is built around pressure, pace, and making life uncomfortable from the opening bell. He believes activity matters, and in his eyes, staying sharp through consistent competition gives him the edge over someone stepping back in after a long break. He's even said directly that he expects to bring heat immediately and test Spence in every possible way. At the same time, Tszyu hasn't ignored what Spence represents. He has openly acknowledged that Spence is one of the standout fighters of this era, someone with a championship pedigree and a reputation built on breaking opponents down. But admiration doesn't change his goal. Tszyu is confident that this is the kind of fight that defines where he belongs in the sport's hierarchy, and he is treating it as a proving ground. On the other side, Errol Spence Jr. has been equally vocal in his own way, though far more controlled and reflective. His time away from boxing wasn't spent disconnected from discipline. Instead, he describes it as a period of rebuilding physically and mentally. He's talked about staying active in different ways, including training, running, even playing football to keep his body engaged. More importantly, he's made changes in his personal habits, stepping away from old routines that he felt were slowing him down. Spence has been clear that this isn't a fighter returning in confusion or desperation. In his words, he didn't take time off to drift away from the sport, but to reset his mindset after years of intense competition and personal strain. He's emphasized that he feels mentally sharp, physically refreshed, and more focused than he has been in a long time. He even pointed out that his lifestyle is now more disciplined, with family, training, and recovery taking priority over everything else. One of the biggest talking points surrounding Spence's comeback is the coaching change. After years working with Derek James, Spence has now moved into a new setup under veteran trainer Ronnie Shields. That shift alone has created plenty of discussion in boxing circles. Spence himself has said the change was about evolution. He felt he had reached a point where his style had become too predictable, too familiar, and he needed a new voice to refine the details rather than rebuild everything. Ronnie Shields, known for sharpening fundamentals and tightening defensive structure, has reportedly focused on improving Spence's timing, head movement, and overall ring economy. The goal is not to reinvent him, but to bring out a cleaner, more efficient version of the fighter fans already know. Early camp reports suggest Spence feels refreshed in this environment, almost like he's rediscovering parts of his game that had gone stale over time. Still, not everyone is convinced that time away can be brushed off so easily. 3 years outside the ring is a long gap in professional boxing, especially at the highest level where timing and rhythm are everything. That's why so many former champions and analysts have weighed in on this fight, each with a slightly different perspective. Sean Porter, who knows Spence better than most from their own battles, has pointed out just how dangerous this matchup really is. He's emphasized that Tszyu's consistency and activity could be a major factor, especially against someone re-entering elite competition after a layoff. At the same time, Porter hasn't dismissed Spence's abilities. He still sees him as a top-tier fighter with the kind of IQ and experience that can flip a fight instantly. Roy Jones Jr. has also spoken positively about Spence's decision to take on such a risky opponent immediately. In his view, this shows confidence rather than hesitation. Instead of choosing a softer return, Spence has opted for a fight that forces him to be sharp from day one. That kind of decision, according to Jones, reflects a true competitor's mindset. Andre Ward has echoed a similar sentiment, highlighting that stepping into a matchup like this without a tune-up says a lot about Spence's self-belief self-belief. Ward has also pointed out that fighters who understand their own identity don't always need warm-up fights. They need meaningful challenges, and this is exactly that. On the flip side, Teofimo Lopez has added a slightly different angle, suggesting that while Spence's experience makes him dangerous, ring rust is always a factor when someone has been away for so long. Even so, he acknowledged that the fight is close on paper and could realistically go either way depending on how quickly Spence reestablishes his rhythm. One of the more unexpected moments in the build-up came during their face-to-face meeting. What was supposed to be a respectful exchange turned tense when Spence did not shake Tszyu's hand. That brief moment instantly became one of the most talked-about parts of the entire promotion. Some viewed it as mind games, others as a natural emotional reaction in a high-pressure environment. Tszyu later expressed disappointment, noting that he was raised to show respect in those moments, but also made it clear that it doesn't change his focus going into the fight. Spence, meanwhile, didn't dwell on it. He continued to emphasize that his attention is locked on the performance itself, not gestures or interpretations outside the ring. Still, moments like that only add more fuel to the anticipation. In boxing, even the smallest interaction can shift the narrative heading into a major event. What makes this matchup even more fascinating is how both fighters see themselves winning. Tszyu believes his pressure and activity will overwhelm a returning fighter still adjusting to elite pace. He expects to push from the opening round, test Spence's reactions, and turn the fight into a physical battle of endurance and will. Spence, on the other hand, believes his experience, IQ, and ringcraft are more than enough to control the fight once he settles in. He has confidently stated that once he finds his rhythm, he plans to take over the contest and remind everyone exactly who he is. He's also made it clear that he doesn't see this as a comeback story, but as a continuation of his career at the highest level. Behind all the analysis, the technical breakdown, and the opinions from legends, there's still one central question hanging over everything. Can Errol Spence Jr. return after a long layoff and immediately handle the pressure of a fighter like Tim Tszyu? Or does Tszyu's momentum and activity level prove too much for a returning elite name still finding his timing? Early signs suggest this fight could come down to rhythm more than anything else. If Spence reclaims his timing quickly, his experience and shot selection could take over. If Tszyu forces him into uncomfortable exchanges early, the fight could tilt in a completely different direction. What's certain is that neither man is approaching this casually. Tszyu sees an opportunity to elevate himself into the top tier of boxing's elite. Spence sees a chance to silence doubts and re-establish his place among the sport's best. That combination alone guarantees tension every time they share space. As fight night approaches, the excitement continues to build. Fans are split, analysts are split, and even former champions can't agree on a clear favorite. And that's exactly what makes this matchup so compelling. It's not just a return fight, and it's not just another contender stepping up. It's two high-level fighters at very different stages of their careers, meeting at a point where everything is on the line. No matter how it plays out, this is one of those fights that will shape the conversation around both men for a long time. And right now, all that's left is to see whose game plan holds up when the pressure becomes real and the first bell finally rings.